everyone, and happy Friday. Thanks so much for tuning in for another episode of Broncos Now. I'm your host, Sydney Jones, and today marked day 3 of training camp here at the UC Health Training Center. So on today's episode of Broncos Now, we'll take a look at some of the top storylines surrounding today's jog-through practice with reaction from head coach Nathaniel Hackett. And we'll also hear from Jeudy as he and Russell Wilson continue to build that on-field chemistry. And of course, Broncos lead writer Eric Dalala will be here in the podcast studio for some analysis. Plus, former Broncos defensive end Derek Wolfe announced his retirement today. So we'll take a look at his career here in Denver and what this retirement means to him. All that and more coming up on today's episode. Practice looked a little different out there today. It was a lighter practice with a slower tempo than we've seen the past couple days of training camp, something head coach Nathaniel Hackett likes to call a jog-through. Today was the first time we've seen a practice like that, and Coach Hackett said it was a good test.
To be able to get through this entire season, you have to learn how to practice with that jog-through mentality. We wanted a little bit more than our typical walks at night. So this was truly a test. We've never done that before with the helmets on and see that, and everybody was nervous about tempo violators and things. We had a little instance with DJ early, but and he tried to bat the ball down and stuff. But I'm unbelievably impressed on how locked in they were. We didn't have many mental errors at all, and the guys were able to communicate and talk. Which is what you're trying to create in that environment. Going 2 days with a conditioning test, want to be sure that they're ready to rock and roll tomorrow.
Coach Hackett went on to say that this is something he learned during his time in Green Bay. He likes to have practices where the players go hard for a couple days, and then they have a refresher day to let their legs rest a bit. Also, this slower tempo gives the guys more time to go through plays and get more reps.
That's probably the most reps we've gotten since we've been out here. So, that's where you kind of give and take. There's so many things you want to cover, and this game is so mental that, everybody talks about the physical attributes people have and the amazing plays that they make, but nobody talks about their amazing intelligence, and this is the ability to just grow that more and more, so that's why we love to do that.
In general, there's been a lot of talk the past couple days about how this offense is gelling and how this offense looks as they continue to master Coach Hackett's offensive system. Coach Hackett told the media today that the wide receiver position is probably the most difficult to learn in this offense. And both he and Jeudy explained why.
It's because of wanting to be multiple. We don't want just one guy to do one thing. We don't want one motion guy. We don't want one outside guy. We want to be able to try to put them in as many different spots as possible. And just kind of build all their route trees, from whether it's in the slot, whether it's in super tight, whether it's out wide, whether it's off play action, whether it's deep down the field. So I think having all the guys that we've had, they've done a great job. We just throw them in there, and they got to learn it. That's, again, is just giving how much credibility I give those guys for what they've been able to do picking up this offense. And they've been working, and that's why it's great to have Russ here, the quarterbacks here, because they're grinding, they're pushing, because we want to do a lot of different stuff.
It's just a lot of new formation, new plays, new schemes, and little detail that you got to make sure you stay in tune with. So that's the biggest thing, really, as a receiver. You just got to know every position as a receiver core, and just know where to be at and why you're there at the same time.
We continue to see Jerry build that on-field chemistry with Russell Wilson today, and he shared the biggest advice that Russell has given him.
Just know when to turn it on and off. When you're not on the field, that's when you could turn it off a little bit. But when you're on the field, it's time to lock in and stay focused on what you got to do that day. So that's the biggest thing I learned from him.
Now it's time to welcome Broncos lead writer Eric Dalala onto the show. Eric, thanks so much for joining me here in the podcast studio. This has been fun the past couple of days, hasn't it?
Yes, it's a good way to start training camp off. Few practices in. It's been nice.
It has been. Yep, day 3 of training camp is in the books. A lighter practice out there today. I know we heard from Coach Hackett a little bit earlier in the show discussing the reasoning behind that. Eric, what did you think about this slower tempo day?
I kind of like it for a couple of reasons, actually. And, you think of training camp traditionally, it's 2-a-days. You're out in the 100-degree heat. You're bashing into each other the whole time. You're trying to get tougher. Obviously, former head coach Vic Fangio would say you got to get calloused. But I think that there's this new age of coach like Nathaniel Hackett that thinks about things a little bit differently, maybe a little bit of a smarter, more player-friendly approach. And I think that this is good because, one, it keeps your guys safe. It keeps them healthy, which is really the most important part of training camps. And you got to get through this without any major injuries. We're knocking on wood right now. We don't want to see anybody go down. And so he said, hey, we see on day 3 of 3 hard training days in a row, that's when injuries happen. So they're trying to avoid that. So I respect it from a health and safety standpoint.
Absolutely.
But then the other thing I like is that it tests you mentally. And we hear so much about, hey, this is a difficult offense to learn, in particular for the wide receivers. If you can test these guys in a setting where, sometimes full speed, maybe you mess something up and it either ruins the whole play or you just kind of play through it. Yeah. In this setting, I think you can really hone in on it and figure out what went wrong, what went right, and you get more plays, as Nathaniel Hackett explained on Friday. So for those 2 reasons, I think it's a good thing. Obviously, we're not going to see it every day, and you don't want it every day, but sprinkled in, I think it's going to be of value.
I agree. You mentioned the wide receiver position. This is a hard offense for them to learn. Coach Hackett said earlier in the show that this is probably the wide receiver position is the most difficult to learn here. But I mean, Jerry, it looks like he's been picking it up. He had a nice couple catches today, even though it was that slow tempo. Eric, I know we talked a little bit yesterday about Jerry's potential, but let's dive in a little bit more. What do you think is his potential for this offense?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a guy that obviously has the talent to be a top receiver in this league, to be a Pro Bowl type guy. I think it's going to be hard for any receiver to truly separate themselves in this offense as like the number one guy, just because Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, they're all talented. They all do things well. KJ Hamler when he comes back. And so I don't think you're going to see one guy with like 1,800 yards and the next guy at 800. I think it's going to be a little bit more clustered than that. But the thing that Jerry does is he has these unique physical skills where he can get separation off the line of scrimmage. His route running is so good. He's able to make those catches in midair. He's a really unique talent, and so I think that's what works to his benefit. And then the other reason why you can kind of see some success heading his way is they're going to use him all over the field. Cortland Sutton is a guy that we think of traditionally as that outside receiver. He's a jump ball receiver. When you think of Jerry Jeudy, he's a guy that can play outside. He can play in the slot. He can catch a screen pass. We joke about the jet sweeps from a year ago, but he could actually take a jet sweep or fake the jet sweep and then catch a ball out of the backfield. He's that type of dynamic player. So he can be used in a lot of different ways, and I think you're going to see him finally take that step this year.
I also want to mention what Russell Wilson said about Jerry during his media press conference the other day. He said that Jerry's been in the quarterback meetings with them just for fun. And
what could be more fun than that?
Right? That's what I thought too. I think that just goes to show how much work Jerry is putting in this training camp. Russell said that he started that first day of training camp, and Jerry mentioned that, he just wants to go through the thought process that the quarterbacks have. He wants to learn more about their reads, and I think he put it best. He says, the more you know, the more you learn, the better you'll get. And I mean, that makes me so excited to see how high Jerry's ceiling is, because I do think it is really high, and I hope he hits the top of that this season.
Yeah, I asked him if he was just in there to try to get more targets from Russ.
What did he say?
He deflected a little bit. I don't think he liked the joke.
Well, Eric, I want to talk about the Broncos tight ends a little bit. I know Albert Okwuegbunam and Eric Tomlinson, they both had touchdowns today. Eric Saubert had a good couple first days of camp too with a couple touchdowns. I know in the past there's been this narrative that Russell doesn't like to use tight ends, but it certainly doesn't seem like the case anymore, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you think of guys like Jimmy Graham, and there's been times where he's done that, but it just hasn't been a consistent place that he's gone in his career. And I don't know if that's by choice, if that's the offensive scheme that they've run in Seattle, if that's a personnel sort of situation. But I think it is clear from watching him in the early days of training camp is the tight ends are going to be a focus in this offense. And the Broncos have talent there. You mentioned Albert O, Greg Dulcich when he gets healthy. Eric Sauberts, I think, surprised people, but he's made some good plays as well. And I think the tight ends open things up. I asked Nathaniel Hackett, what's the most important or what's important for a tight end to be able to do in this offense? And he really said it just changes the looks that you can give different defenses. If you can put 2 tight ends on the field or put a tight end and a fullback on the field, it changes what you can do. It makes the defense kind of think a little bit more. And the Broncos certainly have enough talent at that position that they can do some different things.
Well, just a couple more days away until the players are in full pads and we really get a feel for how good this offense and defense is. Eric, appreciate your insight on day 3. I will see you back here on Monday.
A little bit of a break.
I know. Are you going to miss me?
I will.
In other news, Super Bowl 50 defensive end Derek Wolfe announced his retirement today.
Dear Commissioner Goodell, this letter will confirm my retirement from the National Football League effective today. Sincerely, Derek Wolfe. Good to retire a Bronco.
Derek was drafted by the Broncos back in 2012 and finished his career here in Denver with 33 career sacks, 299 tackles, 46 tackles for loss, and 77 quarterback hits. Today, he reflected on what his career meant to him and the people that helped him along the way.
The number one influence on my career was Bill Kollar. I was already playing good football, and he changed my game completely as far as the confidence that he instilled in me, and he took me and molded me into the player that he was I know you can be better than that. I know you could do better. You got to do better. And it's just he's just such a we're great friends still. And he's I'm forever grateful for Bill. And I wish I would have had him from day one, because who knows what else could happen. But I am grateful for the times that I had with him and the coaching that he gave me, because he was one of the most demanding coaches I ever had, but also when you did make a play, he was just as fired up as you were, and that was special.
Now it's time to take a look at today's injury update. Rookie outside linebacker Christopher Allen is officially off the non-football injury list. He was in a jersey and had his helmet out at practice for the first time today. Billy Turner, Randy Gregory, KJ Hamler remain on the PUP list. Tom Compton was still not at practice, and tight end Greg Dulcich worked out on a side field again. DenverBroncos.com caught up with Christopher Allen after practice and got his thoughts on being out there for the first time.
It feels good, but there's also, just a little bit of rush. So it's nice to, kind of finally to be able, to get out there. I was just thinking about just focusing on my assignments and just try to make as least mistakes as possible, because I feel like I know a lot, but I mean it's a difference between knowing it up in the film room and actually going out there up on the practice field and just being able to do it at a high level and kind of at a high speed. So.
Well, looks like that's all the time we have for today's episode. Thank you all so much for joining me. I look forward to seeing a lot of you out here tomorrow for Back Together Saturday. Make sure to come and find me and say hello. And don't forget, there will be new episodes of Broncos Now every Monday through Friday. So I will not see you guys here tomorrow, but I will be right back here on Monday. So be on the lookout.